to the inaugural episode of The Comic Man Show, and introducing your ever-reliable host, me, The Comic Man. And boy, are you in luck, because there aren't too many produced shows out there that are for men, or for anyone else who wants to put on their big boy or big girl pants. Because on the show, we will be giving our opinions on everything that has to do with the comic book industry, movies, books, and video games, and we will be doing so without watching our tone, without watching our language, without sparing any feelings, and every chance that we get, we will be diminishing, demolishing, eviscerating, and lambasting those small-minded, feckless critics. But a little bit about myself before we continue. I have been a comic book fan ever since the tender age of 4, since I found a Fantastic Four comic. And right around the same time, I watched 1989's Batman with Michael Keaton. And ever since then, I've just fallen in love with comic books and the comic book world. And it has been a big part of my life, nearing 26 years now. So my opinions are very well informed, dipshits. I should get a fucking master's for it. For our inaugural episode, we will be reviewing, and it's a spoiler-filled review, not free, filled. We will be reviewing the much critically maligned Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. So now I believe that right now on Rotten Tomatoes it sits at a 27%. But what that really tells me is that 73% of the critics out there just couldn't stop being pussies long enough to separate themselves from their small-minded expectations and to dig themselves out of that mold of convention that they have cocooned themselves in long enough to judge the film on its merits and appreciate the story that it was actually trying to tell. When I was 9 years old, I discovered this little-known graphic novel called The Dark Knight Returns. And I was in awe as I found out that Batman and Superman existed in the same universe. And as I read through the graphic novel, and as I read how Joker stabbed Batman in the gut, and well within the same book, Batman knocks the shit out of Superman, I'd always dreamed of seeing these icons share the big screen together. And finally, after a 20-plus year wait, I got the movie that I was dreaming about. I love this movie. There are many things to love about it, the foremost being is how our fearless director Zack Snyder captures that DC Comics universe essence. This movie is majestic, it is operatic, it is mythic, it is grandiose, it is epic, it tries to be transcendent. The heroes there aren't just your run-of-the-mill heroes. They are icons. They are mythological beings. They are gods on Earth. Even Batman, who is supposed to be a regular human being, is affectionately known as Bat God because he is just that prepared for any given scenario. And yet Zack Snyder chooses to subvert convention, to go against expectations. He chooses to test these characters. He chooses to subvert comic book tropes and start the movie quietly. He chooses to really examine these characters psychologically. We see these characters in a way that we have never seen them before or we're not used to seeing. We meet Bruce Wayne, who has lost all faith in humanity. We meet a Clark Kent Superman who's doing what he can to be that shining beacon of hope for humanity, yet he feels very isolated. And we meet a very insecure and inadequate Lex Luthor. And yet, this is a movie about hope as well, yet not in the way that is most obvious. At the end of the movie, Batman regains his hope for humanity. At the end of the movie, Superman declares, "This is my world." And Lex Luthor just goes more into crazy territory. Zack chooses to deconstruct the figures presented in Batman vs. Superman and explore the use of power, whether it is just or even morally sound. And at the outset of the story, we are greeted with these characters who each have a degree of power. We have Batman, who feeling powerless and inadequate in the face of Superman's arrival, starts taking it out on those that he feels he has power over, in this case, the criminals. He's starting to lose sight of his mission. He is starting to enact more brutal methods. He's starting to brand them. He is starting to accept collateral damage and even manslaughter. We see Lex Luthor, who's really feeling inadequate in the wake of Superman, and is choosing to take it out on ultimately the whole world. And here we have the one alien, Clark Kent Superman Kal-El, who has absolute power, yet he remains incorruptible. Zack Snyder does a lot of great service and stays loyal to the DC Comics universe lore. He recreates a lot of majestic and iconic shots. He draws heavily from iconic books such as The Dark Knight Returns, such as Luthor, and such as The Death of Superman, and countless others. This is a movie for the DC Comics fan. This was the movie that I had dreamed about, yet was unexpected. I had expected this movie to play it very safe, because it had a whole universe to kick off, and to hook in that general audience. Yet what I got was something very unexpected and beautiful. And the best compliment that I can give this movie is that it gave me something I didn't even know that I wanted. At the same time, Zack was very loyal to the DC Comics universe and to the essence of these characters. Batman. This is the definitive Batman on screen. And finally, we can wash our mouths out of that acrid taste of Christopher Nolan's Batman. And you better believe that The Dark Bitch Rises, that's going to be one of my upcoming episodes, because I can't wait to tear into that movie. That joke of a Batman movie. So this Bruce Wayne that we see, he's already 20 years into his crime-fighting career, and his soul is scarred with the many tragedies and losses that he's endured during that career. We see him even during that Metropolis sequence where he's trying to save lives. He's rushing to Jack at Wayne Financial while Zod and Kal-El are fighting and tearing up the city, and yet he gets to him too late. And that was wonderful when he ran into the destruction, into the debris, because Batman always runs into danger. He does not run away from it. So then when he gets in there, he finds Wally Keefe, so he saves him, but Wally's legs are now gone. They're going to be amputated, so his life's never the same again. Then he saves that little girl, and yet he finds out that the little girl's mother has died. So there's tragedy around every corner for him. There's loss there. And he feels it. He feels every single loss. You can see it in his eyes. And from then on, when he catches sight of those gods again up in the sky, that's when the mission starts for him. That's when that obsession starts. That's when more of that cynicism sets in. And that's where that powerlessness starts setting in. Because during the funeral scene and during the Wayne murders, that's when his world was taken away. That's when he first felt powerless. And here again, maybe even quite literally, the world is being taken away and he feels powerless again. So that's when he decides that something needs to be done about Kal-El, about this Superman. And from then on, for the next 18 months, and it's very subtle, and I know some of you dipshits couldn't connect the dots, it's very subtle, but every move that he's been making has been to get rid of this alien. We see that very early on, when after he branded that criminal, Alfred calls him out on it. And even though Bruce tries to shrug it off and say, we're just criminals, like Alfred quickly pulls up that file on Superman. And if you look closely, you can see that the file is numbered, which implies that Batman has been looking at that Superman file recently. And I also like the dynamic that him and Alfred had, because Alfred speaks to him in a manner that is of a parent, not just a friend of a parent. And that, it really reminded me of that scene in Batman Mask of the Phantasm, another phenomenal Batman movie, where I'm not even going to explain the context to you. Bruce turns to Alfred and he says, "You think you know everything about me, don't you?" And Alfred, without missing a beat, "Well, I diapered your bottoms, I bloody well ought to, sir." And that is the kind of dynamic that they have here, that Alfred just speaks to him in a manner that nobody else dares to. And he calls him out on it. He doesn't let him get away with just trying to explain away his newer, brutal methods. And Alfred's there to give voice to Bruce's frustration that he feels powerless, so that he's going to take it out on those that he feels that he has power over, which are the criminals. So Zach, in that first hour and a half, almost 2 hours, really tries to explore what does power mean and who should wield the power. Zach also stayed true to a lot of the other aspects of Batman's character. We see him as the world's greatest detective when he was chasing down leads for the white Portuguese to steal that kryptonite. We see him as that scientist and that inventor when after he had stolen the kryptonite, he conducts all these experiments on it, and he produces those kryptonite grenades, and he forges that kryptonite spear. We also, of course, see him as the master tactician, because when he prepared for his battle with Superman, which I will get to later when I break down that fight, and we also, of course, see him in that awesome scene as the master combatant, which we will quickly touch on later as well. I also liked how this movie was really about Bruce Wayne's redemption, because the movie starts with him losing hope, and with that funeral scene running away from that hopelessness, from that tragedy. And then at the end, it is bookended with another funeral scene, Superman's, that gives him his hope, that rids away his cynicism, and it makes him realize again that men are still good. Speaking of good men, boy, this Superman is really earnest, isn't he? You can just sense that innate goodness in him. You can sense that he's always just trying to do the right thing, whether as Clark Kent or as Kal-El Superman. And yet at every turn, he is met with cynicism. At every turn, every single one of his decisions and actions is questioned. As Clark Kent, he's trying to shed light on the Bat Vigilante's activities and his brutal methods, yet Perry White keeps denying him that right, keeps stopping him, and with that famous line about how it's not 1938 anymore, apples don't cost a nickel out there or in here. He's trying to counter Clark's goodness by really trying to inject him with a little bit of cynicism, and Clark Kent, very true to his character, rejects it. As Superman, you see him saving lives, whether that be surveying the flood before he saves the victims, whether that be saving the astronauts in that missile in Russia that you see in the beginning of that sequence, or saving those sailors by dragging that huge oil tanker, I imagine, across the ice. And yet, and this is one of the other complaints, that he's not smiling when he's doing this. Well, he has super hearing, doesn't he? He hears what's going on around the world. He hears how every single one of his decisions is being questioned, and it weighs down on him. Yet at the face of all that cynicism, he never gets corrupted. He never abuses his power, and he only uses his power for good. And you also see that when he shows benevolence towards his enemies, when he first finds out who Bruce Wayne is, when he overhears Alfred talking to him. He tries to have more of an ideological debate with Bruce to try to talk him out of doing whatever it is that he's doing. Later on, when he confronts Batman, he gives him the space, he gives him the time to hang up his cowl himself instead of turning Batman in right then and there. And even later on, when he's going to fight Batman, he still gives him that time. He doesn't just rush in. And Batman has observed this, how Superman doesn't rush into anything. He always surveys, and he tries to talk to his opponents first. Later on, when he confronts Lex Luthor, we also see this, how he gives him the time to speak, to explain himself. And even much later on, he gives Lex Luthor time again to explain himself, even after Lex had kidnapped his mother and was going to burn her alive. This is a Superman who is incorruptible. And he shows that at the end, when all he has been trying to do is be the symbol of hope, and he has that opportunity to save this world from the destruction of Doomsday, and he sacrifices his life for it. And that's when humanity finally lets go of its cynicism and sees Superman for what he truly was, that symbol of hope that believed in humanity more than humanity believed in itself. Speaking of humanity, holy shit, Lex Luthor. Now, this is a Luthor that's been updated for modern times, presenting a 30-year-old billionaire as opposed to a 55 or 60-year-old billionaire. He had this magnetic presence about him, and I really enjoyed watching him on screen. And this Luthor that we are met with, he also has feelings of powerlessness, feelings of inadequacy, feelings you get the sense that haven't really surfaced since his father was alive, but that do surface since the arrival of Superman. This Lex hates Superman for a number of reasons. Some being that he just hates all powerful beings and projects it upon Superman that were never there to interfere when his father would abuse him. And so he blames Superman for this, and with the eloquently stated, if God is all good, how can he be all powerful? And if he is all powerful, how can he be all good? So with that simple statement, he is out for the demise of Superman, first launching that PR campaign to turn the world's opinion against Superman, and then, of course, engineering his ultimate demise. So this Lex has zero regard for anything or anybody else except for himself. And we see this from small to large examples. The small being how he force-fed that Jolly Rancher to the senator, to how he would manipulate Wally Keith, to even larger ones where after Senator Finch very pragmatically rejected that import license for the kryptonite rock that would prove fatal to Superman, to bombing and eliminating both Senator Finch and a courtroom full of people just to ignite that spark for Batman to fight Superman and try to kill him. And we also, of course, ultimately see his disregard for this world, that he just felt that this world is beyond hope, this world is beyond him, so he's going to unleash Doomsday upon this world after he takes care of Superman. And you also get the sense that ever since he made contact with the Kryptonian spaceship and that he has been quote-unquote learning as much as he can, that's how he got the idea to create Doomsday, and that he has been slowly going into this descent into madness, which crescendoed in his final meeting with Batman at the end of the movie, where all he could do is just say how the bell has been rung, they've heard ding, 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 you know, he was a fucking lunatic then. So through Lex's machinations, we finally get to the fight, what the title promised us. And to me, it didn't disappoint. I know some of you complained that it was too short, but then you idiots would complain about how Man of Steel climactic fight was too long. So which one is it, dipshits? On screen time, it was like almost 9 minutes of Batman and Superman fighting and doing what the hell they did. Okay, and I love the way it started because it's true to Bruce's observations and study of Superman. Superman started in the sky as Bruce knew he would. So some of those other criticisms about, well, how come Batman just couldn't use the kryptonite sphere right from the get-go is because he knew that Superman likes to survey the situation. He would have seen it from a few miles away, and he would have either swooped in really fast to take out Batman and take care of the spear, or just not approached at all. I enjoyed how Batman had set up this gauntlet for Superman to go through, and you can also see Superman's benevolence towards his enemies there as well, where he's trying to explain himself to Batman. He's trying to give him time again, yet you don't tell Batman what to do, because Batman is there to fight. Batman is there to kill this alien. And it took a really brutal turn, because when Superman finally said, well, enough's enough, I have to disarm this guy, and he plowed him through a building, but then he wasn't ready for the kryptonite grenades, which I'm sure were lined with lead so that he couldn't see through them, because Batman does his homework. Just like he used that gas grenade to shield Superman's vision, it was lead lined. But I guess that was too much for you guys to connect the dots for. So it was a very brutal fight. It was a very personal fight. And to me, and this here's where all the criticisms come in. how the fight ended. First of all, let's give credit to Zack and to the writers for having the balls to actually have a winner here. Batman, of course, kicking the shit out of Superman, which I actually enjoyed. But other than that, to find that emotional connection between both of them with the infamous Martha scene. A lot of people seem to have misunderstood this scene, where they think that as soon as Superman said Martha, that triggered this flashback from Bruce, and that Bruce then lowered his spear and decided to just be friends with Superman. That's not what happened at all. If you notice, if you actually are paying attention, and you notice when Superman first says Martha, Batman even gets more angrier. He didn't lower the spear. He was getting ready to impale this being that he didn't even see as a man, but as an alien. But it takes the knowledge of him finding out that Martha is Superman's mother. That Superman, in his hour of demise, asks for the life of another. That's when Batman finally realizes that he has become everything that he has been fighting against for these 20 years. He remembers why he became Batman in the first place, to prevent from what happened to his family from happening to another family. And he realized that if he were to kill Clark, not Kal-El anymore, Clark, he would be taking him away from his family, from his mother. And at that moment, he realized just how wrong that he had been, and he cast the spear away because he realized how much more human Superman was than he. And from then on, you can see, through Ben Affleck's great performance, that Batman has resolved to save lives again, to not accept them as collateral damage again. And so he vows to Superman, so that Superman can go and take care of whatever's happening on a Kryptonian ship, that he will save Martha. And Martha won't die today. That he will find Martha like the detective that he is. And we get to the great Batman fight scene. The fight scene that I've been waiting my entire life to see, and we finally get it. And yet you idiots had to nitpick this to death too. Unbelievable. We can't even enjoy a badass Batman scene anymore without you bitches crying about it and saying things like, oh, I hope that guy that he knocked to the floor is okay. Oh, I hope the guy he knocked through the wall is gonna live. What? This is the kind of nitpicking that we're gonna do now? Huh? What did you want him to do? Did you want Batman to crack a joke and say, hello, Mr. Nice Guy, here's some pillows that I fluffed up. Here, I'm going to knock you on them. And for the nice guy to ask him for some orange slices and then crack a joke and then just have a hilarious and good old time so that you sitting in the theater can just turn your brain off and just shovel buttered popcorn and Skittles and Twizzlers and pretzels down your fat gullet and then afterwards wash it down with cookie dough colada and then turn to your friend and say, oh, it's the best movie ever. It was so funny. Best comic movie ever. Fuck you. You shitheads are going to be the reason the comic movie industry dies because you want to compare everything to the action comedy stylings of Marvel Studios. So I know that Batman vs. Superman was going to be inadvertently compared to Captain Pussy Civil War. And you better believe that is my next episode that's coming out. Should be called Avengers 3 Pillow Fight for all the tension that it had. Do you want everything to be the same? Do you want it all just to be this one huge blur? Don't you want any variety? Don't you want darker themed, more adult themed comic book movies and more of a lighter themed, fun action comedies? We live in an age where we can have both, dickheads. You don't need to try to eliminate one to save the other. Getting back on point. This movie, of course, has endured a lot of criticism because what they state as plot holes. Yet there aren't any if you're actually paying attention. Okay, there was the question of how they can frame Superman for the deaths in Africa. Well, they show you a scene right afterwards about that African woman who's testifying, who's saying how when the skies parted, he landed and then there were dead bodies everywhere. And then the government took it out on the villages. The government again feeling powerless. So what was actually happening is that Lex was starting his PR campaign to turn the world's opinion against Superman by just merely implying that Superman's presence causes violence. So that's what that plot hole was about. You guys just couldn't follow it along. Another one was how did Lois Lane know to go back for that spear? Well, yeah, this was subtle, but if you actually use your brain cells, it is obvious. Well, Lois is the one who finds out about there being trouble at the Kryptonian ship, and she's the one who informs both Batman and Superman. So since then, she, being a Pulitzer Prize winning reporter, figures out or thinks to herself that, well, if the threat is going to be Kryptonian by origin, then this spear should definitely help. So she goes in search for that spear. Another big criticism, Batman killing. He never really goes for murder. He just enjoys more collateral damage and more manslaughter. And a lot of you are saying, well, this Batman was just out of character. He's not the Batman that I know. Congratulations, you're perceptive about something. He's not supposed to be the Batman that you know. He is supposed to be acting out of character, being more brutal in his methods, branding criminals with the full expectation that they will be killed in prison, trying to engineer and devise a way to kill a god, not really having time to saving lives anymore. And his mentality has completely shifted now, where it's as thus. I am chasing you down, and if you decide to strap a minigun in the back of a car and shoot me with it, be prepared for those consequences. So you get the sense that Batman in the past, he would have taken the time to avoid fatalities, or if these dumb shit criminals got themselves into trouble, he would have veered off course from his mission, from his pursuit to save them. This Batman no longer has time for that, because this Batman has lost hope, and he has grown more and more cynical. What's another criticism that you guys had? How the Doomsday fight and Batman didn't have enough to do. You know what? That one's kind of valid. And here are some of criticisms that I have. It's not a lot. I really love this movie, like I said. I could have used a few less scenes with Lois Lane. I'm thinking back to her meetings with Secretary of State Swanwick or General Swanwick. Do we really need 3 scenes there? Like, it could have just been done in 1 or maybe 2. You know, bada bing, bada boom. She's in, here's the bullet. I'm not wearing a halo. Please just look into this. And then another meeting where he informs her of that it's Lex Luthor behind it. I would have liked to see a little bit more action in that first hour, only just to hold the attention of some more of these dullard, mush-mouthed, pea-brained, butter popcorn eating general audience. I know we got that in the really cool dream sequence, and that's another thing, okay? Not everything has to be explained to you, okay? It was a dream sequence. Did you understand what was going on? It was a possible future if Superman went bad and tried to take over the world, okay? Did you guys get that much? Yes, I think you did, so stop bitching about that too. You do have a point to bitch about the following scene where the Flash shows up to Bruce, and you have no idea what the hell's going on there. All you know is that Flash went back in time, and he said he was too soon about something. So that one I do get. It was a lot more inaccessible, so if you didn't know the lore behind it, you would have been left there scratching your head. I really wish they gave Batman more to do during the Doomsday fight. He was really like off in the corner giving a thumbs up sign to when Wonder Woman and Superman were both fighting. And I did like Wonder Woman in this. Her screen time was just right. Her entrance was badass. And I can't wait to see more of her in her solo movie. I really wish that they had given him the job to go looking for the spear. But then again, he wouldn't really know where it is at that point since Lois threw it in the pool. I also wish that he played more of a general, so it could have been something like he goes to Superman and Wonder Woman both, when they have a moment of reprieve and says, okay, here's what we're going to do. Wonder Woman, you have that lasso. Once you try to hold him, I'm going to use my kryptonite grenade to sedate him somehow or to subdue him. And then Superman, as hard as you can, just fly into him with the spear and then try to fly out of it. But we didn't get that. And I guess there was like a little bit more action I would have put in, like when they first met. I would have had Batman kind of tried to fight off Superman, but then yet again that would have ran counter to all this surveillance and study that Batman has done on Superman and knows like what his MO is. Plus, I'm not a complete asshole to try to rewrite a scene like Chris Stuckman or Chris Fuckman with his YouTube videos. And I'm sure some of you have heard about it. He took it upon himself to write a 20-page scene alteration of dialogue exchanged between Batman and Superman before their fight. And, we all know he gave the movie a C+. Well, I'm giving you, Chris Fuckman, a D- for your script. I would have given it an F-, but you did introduce us to the hilarious line of, "Tell it to Zod's broken neck." Overall, though, I fell in love with this movie. I've seen it 6 or 7 times since its release. I can't wait for the Blu-ray edition. I will be reviewing the extended edition. I really can't wait for that. And I really recommend that everybody do see this. Do pick it up in Blu-ray or digital, or just find some way to see it, because you owe it to these iconic characters who I am sure have been either a small part or a large part of your lives. They are part of our modern mythology. You owe it to these characters who are finally, for the first time ever, going to be sharing a screen together. You owe it to them to go and watch it. So that's it for the first episode of the Comic Man Show. You can leave comments below or tweet me or email me with your compliments, criticisms, or challenges. I will be happy to tell you why you're wrong. Until next time, Comic Man signing off.